couple of pages tonight, if you haven't opened up the back sound box back there. Follow along. Take notes, and I mentioned last week, if you weren't here, fold them over so that the prints on the outside, I wouldn't stick them in the Bible or the book or whatever, and write and keep your notes. Hopefully that'll be helpful too. We're continuing on from where we stopped last week. If you have last week's notes, we missed a few things, so I just started on those tonight. Looking at the people who got converted to Islam and believed. Before we get there, let me just mention a couple things. First of all, question sometimes comes to mind: did Muhammad know about Christianity, Judaism, and other religions? The answer to that is yes. At the age of 13, he traveled with his uncle Abu Talib. He was a guy that never converted to Islam, but was willing, because as I mentioned last week, in the tribal things where everybody was out for themselves, and if you wanted to help, you'd bribe another tribe to help. I shouldn't have even become. Excuse me. But anyway, so he traveled at the age of 13 up to Jerusalem and other places, and he heard of Christianity. He heard about, a cup of water back there would be great. Thank you. As he traveled, he heard about these different religions. Heard about Christianity, heard about Judaism, didn't agree to any of them, didn't think it was worth listening to. You see, I can read something for you, right? He learned about Zoroastrianism, which was in Persia, Manichaeism, Arabian pagan religions, of course, in the Arab Peninsula. They're all pagan religions. And in fact, some of the thinking, thank you. But as he heard these things, he said, that's not for me. That's not what he wasn't interested in. But he also, keep in mind, I mentioned last week that there were a lot of heretical Christian things going on. There were some real differences of opinion of the Roman or Western Church and their teachings, which is basically what we believe about the Trinity and God and Jesus being having two natures, divine nature and human nature, but combined into one where there was no distinction. But there were these differences of groups: Nestorians, what was the other one I mentioned? Monophysites. They believed that Jesus had one nature. Well, he heard these things and he thought, well, this is just a bunch of division amongst Christianity in that part of the world, and he didn't want to do it. He also heard a lot of the, what we call apocryphal writings. Back in those days, people would write stories about Jesus, especially his early life. We don't believe those are scriptural. We don't believe they're authorized or in any way scripture, but there were stories such as Jesus' infancy. Well, he heard these stories. Muhammad was illiterate. He could not read. So he'd hear these things, and the Arabs and the people in that part of the world, Semitic people, memorized everything. They could memorize stuff, and they loved poetry, and they'd hear something poetic, and they would memorize it. That's how they would transmit down family members to family members without any kind of written language in those days. And he heard these things, and he liked what he got out of one religion, Zoroastrianism, Manichaeism. Mentioned some of that later, but he liked what he saw in some of those, but he didn't like what he saw in Christianity or in Judaism. In fact, he hated the Jews and tried after them. So when you read the Quran, you realize some of the things in that book, and the Quran means recitations. Muhammad couldn't read or write, so he didn't write the Quran. He recited it to someone else who perhaps wrote it down. His adopted, I call him adopted, but he was a slave, Zaid, we talked about last week, was his secretary. So he would write down perhaps some things that he used in those words, in those chapters called SOR. 114 surahs or chapters in the Quran. And by the way, let me tell you something about that. It's believed that the original text was preserved in heaven. Sounds like the Mormons almost. The only faithful version is the Arabic version even today. Islamists today will not accept a translation. That's why when you say, well, it says this, and all that, only by the Arabic. Only take that. And then, of course, they have to be able to interpret that. Memorization was done. There was no written things. When Muhammad died, the next fellow who came along, who was it? One of the Abu Bakr, the next caliph. Caliph means leader, or actually it means a successor. The caliph, and today there's a caliph, we'll talk about that some other time, but a caliph is a successor to Muhammad. He didn't set down any rules about that. So when Abu Bakr came along, he said, we need an authorized version of the Quran. He got Zayd to compile one. He said, well, what order should we do it? Should we do it in order of subject matter? Because they were just basically thoughts, and it came to his mind. There's those surahs, those chapters, those 114 chapters. And earlier ones were very poetic, very beautiful, describing God and so forth. And supposedly these were inspirations from the angel Gabriel. Although I have a doubt that it was really Gabriel. I remember it was Satan in disguise, but that's just my opinion. Or it should be chronologically. Or a third possibility is length of the surahs, the chapters. Well, we went with that third one, and so the first chapters of the Quran are these, 300, 500 verses, chapters, and people reading it, non-Muslims get bored to death. They don't want to read it. Most Muslims don't read the Quran for that reason too. But anyway, he came up with this version of the Quran, a lot of poetic stuff in some of the later verses and chapters. But as time went on, about 20 years after his death, they discovered that, just like in Christianity, the early texts, there were variations. Well, the caliph of that day said, we can't have any variations, so they said, let's compile, we got somebody to compile one authorized version, and you know what they did with all the others? They destroyed them. So only one version of the Quran was legitimate. That's why it's been the most pure text of the centuries. Now, Christianity and other faiths, when we have written documents, we believe the oldest ones are the most important. They're the best ones to go back to. And all those early ones were destroyed, which shows a contrast between the religion of Islam and Christianity or Judaism, any of those things. By the way, I just heard in the news a recent discovery, and I think it was Iran or maybe Iraq, of a copy of an ancient text of the Quran. Well, that's going to make the ISIS people mad, because those ancient texts were supposed to all be destroyed, and they were variations. They weren't exactly what they say or claim that Muhammad came up with. But anyway, along with the Quran, there was written and an appendum or edition called a hadith. And that was not done by Muhammad. It was after his death. It was done as stories and histories and remembrances of his wives. He had at least 10 wives and I don't know how many concubines. And other early members of that group of Islamics. And they remember some of the stories and they wrote those down in what's called a hadith. And so modern day Muslims interpret the Quran with the hadith. If they read what says hadith, what he was doing at the time, or what they believe, then they'll translate back and forth and use that to help them out. Now, how do we know these things about what I'm telling you about? Because about 100 years after Muhammad lived, two historians, actually one 100 years and one about 200 years, wrote the history of Muhammad and telling you what we're hearing here. So while some of these ancient stories are just that, they're stories, some could very well be very accurate, and especially the battle story we read about. Now, let's get back to the notes you got there. The early converts, and you remember, to wrap up last week, you remember it all centered around this place in Mecca, this box, this huge square-looking box, and it's, I don't know how many, 50 feet tall, I'm not sure how tall it is, and that large, that cube thing, they called it the Kaaba. And this is where the ancient Arabs, who were polytheists, they didn't believe in one God, they believed in 360 gods. They would come there every year for a pilgrimage, and Muhammad's family, his great-great-great-grandfather, came there like 300 years before him, or 200 years, and conquered Mecca. And they became the keepers of the Kaaba, his family, the Quraysh family. They kept that place, and they did kept well, it's not a temple, but this holy site where they believed that the gods were worshipped. And when they pilgrimaged there, these people from all over, and there were thousands of people, they had to eat, so they kept the concessions. You say, well, what's that? That means they provided food, and they charged very much money, charged extra. Got very wealthy, got very, wealthy, looked up to. These were the families. And within that family, there was some real fighting and conflict, because some of the sons and grandsons of this guy who conquered it, they wanted their cut. They wanted their part. And so Muhammad came out of a family with real division. And so when he grew up, he looked around and saw all this paganism stuff. And the pilgrims who would come they'd have to wear these certain robes, and the family there, the Quraysh family, would provide the robes at a cost. And of course, all this was, again, money for them. It was a very, quite a lucrative operation. But Muhammad got upset about the fact that there were so many gods, but nothing about the fact they were marching around here. Some of the women were naked, some of the people were naked because they couldn't afford the garments, so they just danced around and in a pagan fashion do that. He was upset. He thought that was wrong. So here he comes along and says, there's only one God. Muhammad speaks for him. That was the theme. That was the concept of his faith that he believed in. And these early converts, let's see what the first one I mentioned was. Abu Bakr, he becomes later, after Muhammad's death, the first caliph, which means successor. And we'll talk more about him. Another one there is his uncle Hamza, around 615 AD. We'll hear more about Hamza. Hamza was a big man, and when in battle, he could defeat anybody. When they would battle, folks, back in those days, they'd have their armies ready to attack and so forth. And just like in the Bible times, rather than have the whole army fight, they just say, hey, let's get one of your greatest people out and we'll fight. And occasionally be like, get me 3 of your best and 3 of our best. Well, Uncle Hamza, he was one of the biggest. He'd go out and fight. He and Ali, a son-in-law, kind of an adopted son of Muhammad and some others, they'd go out and fight, and they'd win because they were so big. We'll hear more about Hamza a little bit later. Umar, he became the second caliph after Abu Bakr. And we'll hear more about him. But in Mecca, where this is going on, remember this is the place where their family, the Quraysh family, was, and forgive me, but I'm trying to remember these names without being written down. This family, there was again opposition within the family, and the people in Mecca began being upset because this crazy man named Muhammad was talking about one God, and they worship all the gods. You're cutting out our gods if you say there's one God. His name is Allah. What does Allah mean, by the way? Allah means the God. Every tribe in Arabia had a god for their tribe, and they called him Allah, the God. Well, when Muhammad came along, he said the God is Allah, and of course in that temple there's that stone that supposedly fell out of heaven. We think it might be a meteorite or a glass formed from a former meteorite or whatever. And there was a moon god also called Ula, I think, or something like that. I can't remember the name. But the moon god, if you see any Islamic symbol today, it has a crescent moon, half crescent moon. And usually either a sword or a star or something there. Well, that moon god became basically Allah. As again, one of many. There was 360 guys, and he simply said, this is the one. On every minaret today, every mosque today, you'll see either a half moon or something like that on the outside. So that really is where Allah came from, although he called it the only God, the one and only God. So basically, it came out of paganism and polytheism as multiple gods. Annual pilgrimage, they had a feast, and when people would come for this pilgrimage, he was lamenting and harassing these people, so people in the town, they were kind of getting mad at it, opposed to him, all this carrying on he was doing. So there became a division in the family. Umar, an uncle, opposed Muhammad, and saying that you're betraying our ancestors and our tradition by what you're doing, Muhammad. Our business interests are at stake here. People are going to come here and go to pilgrimage to this place, march around if you're going to treat them in such a way and tell them they're wrong. And so there was a kind of a conflict there between, well, a couple of groups, I won't name them here, but one man named Abu Safan was Muhammad's friend, but he became the leader of an opposition group. And so he was always opposed to Muhammad and what he was doing. His wife was named Hind, Hind, excuse me, I think he's on there somewhere maybe. Yeah, you'll hear more about Hind. She was an amazing woman. She was a revengeful woman, and you'll hear about her in a second. Then, during this time, a black slave, see, people were, trying to torture people because if you believe this Muslim stuff, if you believe in only this one God, you push you up to persecution and torture. Bilal was this black slave who was being tortured by his master, and I think it was Abu Bakr set him free. He was a big man, but he was also a singer. And that word muezzin, whatever I can pronounce that word, means singer or one who sings or chants. They had this Bilal, this big fellow, this black man, go to the top of the mosques or wherever they were worshiping, and he would sing the call to prayer. And they would pray 5 times a day in this pagan act. And he would be the singer of calling people to prayer. And one of the things he'd pray first thing in the morning was, prayer is better than sleep. Get up and let's pray at dawn for people to get up and sing. He used to sing that. Of course, all these people, you'll find out later, got killed or died in great battles and so forth. But he's got this conflict within the city or the town of Mecca, and because of that opposition he's facing, he told his followers to flee for refuge to another place. Let's look at this for a second, please. There it is. They're over here in Mecca. He said he didn't flee over to Ethiopia. Ethiopia was a Christian country. And by the way, it remained Christian through all the centuries, although probably a variation of Christianity, what we would consider. But Ethiopia, across here, he had his followers. And there were probably, I think we talked about it, 16 men and 20-some women and slaves and so forth. And so they fled across here to Ethiopia for protection. The Khwarizm group came after them, tried to arrest them, bring them back, whatever they could. It was never worked. But while they were in Ethiopia, the king of Ethiopia, and I forget how they called him by name, but anyway, they were telling him about what was going on over here in Arabia, and telling him how they were trying to get to believe in one God. And this king who was from a Christian perspective, when he heard that, he thought, oh, one God, you must be becoming Christians. That's what his thinking was. Of course, you see all the various sects and groups in Christianity that didn't understand doctrine. They just assumed it must be a Christian group, being a one God or a monotheistic group. And he was so excited for that. Well, the trying to kill him did not fail. They ended up coming back to Mecca. And it was there in Mecca that Muhammad, something very unusual, he had a strange appearance of what he believed was what's the angel? Gabriel, thank you. My mind is not quite catching up with my thoughts here. Believed it was Gabriel who spoke to him, and he compromised. The people in Mecca said, we got all these gods, and you can't just throw all these gods out. And so Muhammad said, okay, I'll compromise here. We'll leave 3 goddesses, because they had them in that little kabbalah anyway. The 3 gods we mentioned last week, I don't have them written down in front of here, but anyway, Al-Lat was one, Al-Uzza was one, that was a sex goddess and so forth. And these 3 goddesses, he said, okay, I'll let 3 of them stay. And he says, Gabriel told me, and he wrote this in the Quran too, by the way, or it was written in the Quran, that 3 goddesses are okay in this, but Allah will be the highest of them. That was the message from Gabriel according to Muhammad. Later, he claimed that Gabriel came to him and said, I disavow those verses. I disavow what I just said. So he had to write that down, which is an embarrassment to Muslims today that God, this God, Allah, would somehow give him the wrong message to put in this holy writ. But that's what it says. And so Gabriel disavowed the verses, and that's what we know as the satanic verses. There are not very many of them, but it's an embarrassment to the Muslims today. They don't really want to talk about it because it's one of those things, it's like, we found something that's not quite right. But anyway, and by the way, a few years ago, 20-some years ago, a book was written called Satanic Verses. I forgot the guy's name out in London. But it was a novel that had something to do with this. But it made Allah look bad in the eyes of Muslims, so the Muslims were out to kill him. What's his name? Salman Rushdie, you remember him? He still has a fatwa on his head. If people find him, Muslims find him, they'll kill him. And let me mention this, that I don't think I've got this written down. I've read in here about how Muslims are divided into 3 groups. Let me just read this to you real quick. There are talk about moderate Muslims. We think of a large group of moderate Muslims. 3 groups of Muslims today, a minority of fundamental violent ones. In other words, those who, and you hear about them all the time because they want to blow up things and kill people. A minority of fundamental ones, a majority of moderate ones who are afraid of the fundamental violent ones. And then there are the courageous ones who are not afraid of the fundamental violent ones. And they're the dead ones. So of the 3, you're either in the kill everybody or the be quiet if they're killing people, because otherwise you'll die too. In other words, Muslims don't live very long if they oppose what's going on. Well, soon after this, what's called a boycott was taking place in Mecca. They boycotted this group. Hashemonites simply means that's one of those divided groups that was in the family that Muhammad came out of. And his uncle Abu Talib here was involved in this. He provided security for Muhammad. His family kept security. No, he didn't believe. And this boycott was put on by Mecca to try to squelch this and stop Muhammad for what he was doing. Unfortunately, the boycott failed. They did it for 2 years, had the document, the article written and put it in the Kaaba, and they say that termites ate it up, and so there was no more boycott. They ended that. But in 619, a tragedy happened. His wife, Khadijah, you mentioned her. She was a wealthy woman. She had run those caravans over the years. Remember the caravans went up and down that western side of the Red Sea there. And she died. She provided the money and the finances for his endeavor here, this religion he was putting on. She was 65 years old when she died. And you'll see in the writings of the Quran after she died, the themes changed to more serious, more violent type of things. Lost the inspiration for the poetic, the beautiful things he was writing. And also, Abu Talib died in that same year. Remember, that tribe of his was protecting Muhammad. And so what you've got here, all of a sudden, Muhammad and all his, I won't say craziness, and his people that were following him were suddenly at risk. They were at risk of somebody, or these other tribes, or somebody killing them. Well, 3 months after Khadijah died, and this wealthy woman, and he only had one wife at that time, and he had 6 children I mentioned. 2 were males, they died in infancy. 4 daughters. The only one who outlived Muhammad was his daughter Fatima. And she made a major segment of the Muslim religion off of her, because she was supposedly the bloodline from Muhammad through her. That was official bloodline. Whereas the other group was different. It's the difference we have today between Sunni Muslims and Shia Muslims, Shiites. We'll talk about that some more at another time. But the more interesting, and by the way, he got a wife, her name was Sauda, but she was more of a housekeeper. The text says she was a fat woman, and he didn't really care for her that much, but he married her. He was divorcing her, and she said, "Oh, don't divorce me, because I want to remain a wife of Muhammad." Everybody knew he was supposedly a great man. At least that's what all the legends tell. And she wanted to stay, so he okayed it. Said, "Okay, you say be my wife," and he joined the harem. But didn't much care about. He was much more interested in Abu Bakr's daughter. The daughter was given to him. Her name was Aisha. You know how she was? 6 years old. Now we talk about pedophiles and how you say that Muhammad was a pedophile. He married a 6-year-old girl, consummated the marriage, they say, at 9 years old. It has a record. I'm sorry.
How do you spell her name?
Aisha, have I got it written down there somewhere? Not if I don't. Sorry about that. A''Isha. I apologize, I didn't write that down for you. But he remarried, took her as a wife. She became the queen of the harem. Now, I mentioned he married probably 10 or 11 wives. She became very influential as her career grew, and over the future of Islam, she became very influential. She was the one that decided that Abu Bakr needed to be the ruler. But without Abu Talib, his uncle, his followers, they all knew they were open to attack. But during this time, they had what's called these unusual visions. He had unusual visions. The night journey. He saw in a vision a trip to Jerusalem. He took a trip to Jerusalem, he says, on wings of a horse with Gabriel. And he had this vision of appearing in Jerusalem. And you know how these crazy stories are. And I guess he thought he dreamed it, but he said it very real. A cousin of his said, you need to keep quiet about that. You need to keep that tale to yourself. And in the Quran, it merits one verse. But again, it's one of these strange visions that he saw. Other traditions, he says he went to the seventh heaven. So like Paul, in the book of 1 Corinthians, went to the seventh heaven. He saw Jesus, Moses, Abraham. He had prayer with them. In that passage, he describes exactly what Jesus looked like. He said he was a tall man, and all this stuff about how he looked. I think he had red hair and red beard and so forth. Describing what Jesus looks like. So he knew about Jesus, but he believed Jesus was a prophet. But he also believed that he was the greatest prophet, Muhammad was. In meeting with Moses in that vision, Moses was there, and Muhammad said to Moses, listen, I think it would be great if people prayed 50 times a day. Moses said, oh no, that's way too much. That'd be too hard on people, too difficult. He said, well, how about 40? No, how about 30? Finally came down to 5 times a day. Moses says, that's okay, let's have him pray 5 times a day. This is all the stories that came out of these crazy visions that he was having. Of course, they'd already been doing 5 times a day through the pagan religions. But at this time, after having these unusual stories, it's almost like, you're dreaming this stuff. This isn't real. People couldn't believe it. People doubted. Conversions stopped. People quit following Muhammad. The Quran, as I mentioned, after the death of Khadijah, changed emphasis. Moses was not just a prophet now, but he was the prophet. Moses was the prophet. I'm sorry, I said Muhammad. I'm thinking. He was the prophet. Let me read you what he says. Whosoever disobeyeth God and his prophet, from him is prepared the fire of hell. That's Surah 72. Fire of hell. If you don't believe in Muhammad, you're in trouble, according to him. The rules became more strict, very stringent. Food. He started describing food. You could not eat pork. That's one of the rules still in Muhammad or Islam today. No naked dancing at the Kaaba. He established the Creed. No God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. Well, now all of a sudden he's really in trouble because these folks in Mecca were about ready to kill him. They wanted to assassinate him. That was the intention. So he decided it might be a good time to get out of town and move to Medina. Remember where Medina is? It's north of Mecca by about 200 miles. And there's Mecca, there's Medina, and long trip. But during those pilgrimages, Muhammad met these folks from Medina, and they seemed very open to what he was telling them. They seemed like, that sounds like logical stuff. You're the prophet, and Muhammad, or God is Allah is the God, and they were kind of warm to that. So Muhammad thought, well, why don't I send my people up to Medina? And he did so. Medina had been established centuries before. During Nebuchadnezzar's invasion of Palestine in 600 BC, remember the Babylonian captivity. Jewish refugees fled from there, and even went down there and established some places. There were at least 3 settlements of Jews within Medina. And other people, there was a mixed religious group in Medina. And so there in that place, 12 prominent Medinites, I should say, people from Medina, got together with Muhammad, and they made a covenant or a pledge here. It's called the First Pledge of Aqaba. And they took the message back. Basically, it said this: we will not worship any but the one God. We will not steal, neither will we commit adultery nor kill children. We will not slander in any wise, nor will we disobey the prophet in anything that's right. First Pledge of Aqaba. They took that back, and apparently the people in Medina thought, sounds pretty good. We can live with that. And so we thought, let's send the people up there. Then there's a second pledge of Aqaba. It says, and again, Muhammad's making this covenant with these people, and there's 73 men this time. Whoever you want to war against, him I will war against. Whoever you make peace with, I will make peace with. And this is a second pledge. So Muhammad is making this pledge with the people in Medina to get them on his side. And while he was there, several things happened. He sent them up there. It took a while before he went there, but when he went, it was almost like a triumphal entry, kind of like Jesus entering Jerusalem. He came and everybody praised him coming in, and was like, how wonderful this man Muhammad, this prophet. And he changed some things. The one was Friday became the new holy day. It became a new day of worship. Not Sabbath, not Saturday, not Sunday, the Christian worship day, but Friday would become the holy day. And the people there also built him a great house, a great building. They call it a mosque. Mosque means a place of prostration. And every mosque since that time basically takes the same pattern, the same plan when they establish a mosque. There are buildings, there are parts for it for the women to be in, there are parts for men to be in, there are worship places, prayer places, and so forth. But the Prophet Muhammad there in Medina became, kind of like a city ruler, like a mayor almost. People honored him so much, they were so proud he was there. He was one of the leading persons in the city. He began establishing laws. You can't drink wine. There'll be no female infanticide. In other words, you have a baby girl, you can't put her to death. No interest charged on debts. If a person stole something, their hands would be cut off. And there were harsh rules, as you can tell. And of course, Bilal joined him there, and he stood up on top of that mosque and sang his muezzin to call people to prayer. Also during this time, he instituted what's called the fast of Ramadan. For 30 days, everyone who's a follower of Muhammad would fast for 30 days. They're just during the daytime. They still do it. It's usually in the fall, although it varies because they have a lunar calendar. They follow the moon. Remember, the moon god? We assume it came from the moon god, but anyway. Their calendar changes from year to year so that they get moving up, where Ramadan becomes sometimes in the summer months. Well, what does that mean? It means the days are so long in the northern hemisphere that the Islam people get pretty long in the day before they can eat. They have feasts at night when it's dark. When the sun goes down, it's okay to eat. Daytime you can't. That's the fast. It's not a fast like we know of it, but it's kind of hard on folks in the northern hemisphere when it's summertime and Ramadan hits the same time. Circumcision became the law amongst Muslims. Semitic people did that, the Jewish people had that practice, but not before this. And there's no historical record that Muhammad was ever circumcised, but that became the law to Muslims. And Muhammad led prayers. He led prayers from the mosque there. They were called to pray, but he'd be like the leader of prayer. And you know how they pray? They all get down on their faces and bow towards, in those days, towards Jerusalem. Later, Abu Bakr became the one who led prayers. In fact, that became the problem of succession, because the one who led the prayers led the nation, led the people of Muhammad. Now, did Medina, everybody there in that city accept him? No, there were some who didn't. Some were scoffers. And he knew there were people who were scoffers. And he called them hypocrites. And those who were on his side, he called helpers. The Jews would not be a helper. They were more worse than hypocrites because they were the greatest resistance. There's 3 settlements of Jews that Muhammad hated. Because for them to become a follower of Muhammad, they'd have to deny their God. They'd have to deny Scripture. And they wouldn't do it. So about a year and a half after being there in Mecca, well, by the way, the year he arrived there, I didn't mention that. It was on your paper there, didn't it? July 16th, 622. That was year 1. Year 1 of the Islamic calendar, even today. That's year 1. So they base their calendar on those years from that year on. So after he was there for about a year and a half, and those Friday prayers, and they always bowed towards Jerusalem and bowed down in worship. Muhammad said, well, let's change this. Let's bow towards Mecca. And they all turned around, and of course, according to that map, they made a 180-degree turn and began bowing down in obedience towards Mecca from that day on. Well, the Jewish people saw that, and that was idolatry to them. That's considered idolatry. If you don't worship toward Jerusalem, you're not really a follower of the true God. And they were in opposition ever since. Well, around 623 AD, the Muslims had basically taken over the town of Medina. Now, not like the Meccans, the Medians were kind of agricultural people. They were able to, in industry, doing stuff. They weren't just the camel caravan people. So, but the folks who came from Mecca, who were all these Muslim followers, they were used to the camel caravans. And what they do, the thing of every tribe was, their common sport was, let's go raid the caravans coming through, because they make a lot of money this way, basically stealing. Razzias, I think I wrote it down here. Good man, that's what it was called. Where is that on page? Yes, razzias. That meant basically a raid. And Muhammad and his people said, well, we can't do this industry. We can't do this agriculture. We don't know how to do that. We don't know how to plant crops. But we do know how to rob caravans. So that's what they began doing. They began plundering for God. And when they would raid a caravan, they'd bring home the spoils of what they raided, and 80% of it was kept by the people who raided. 20% was always given to Muhammad, supposedly so he could help the poor, but he became rather wealthy by all these raids and these Raja rules. Let me read some of them to you. I'll find it here. Muslims could justifiably lie. They lie now because, after all, you're doing this for God, right? You're stealing their stuff for the sake of Allah. You could rob or kill to accomplish any purpose you wanted to, as long as it's for God. These became the rules. 1/5 of the spoil was given to Muhammad. The rest of the pillage became their whatever, they belonged to them. And this pillage became an expression of devotion, even charity. So in other words, stealing became all right. Well, soon after this, a battle occurred. By the way, as they're stealing from these caravans, most of the early ones they missed, they couldn't get this. The caravans were pretty well protected because they had other tribes doing the protection. But one group, led by Abu Sufyan, he had a caravan. On the way out, he managed to escape it. On the way back, in the little town of Badr, B-A-D-R, a great battle occurred because Abu Sufyan knew what was up, so he got some troops to help him out. He got some people to surround his caravan and protect him. Well, the Muslims, the Meccan group, they got even a bigger group, and they had a battle. And that battle was fierce. People were killed. Ali, Hamza, and others, they just cut the people down. And Hind, his wife, Abu, what's his name? Sufyan, yes, thank you. I forget his name. But anyway, she declared that she would not eat again until she ate Hamza's liver, because her brothers and father were killed in that battle in Badr. Badr was a It was a fierce battle. It was an indication that God was behind this, because they thought when we're right, we're right when we're winning. If we win, we're in the right. And they won that battle of fire. They conquered people and killed people, and Hines said, "I'm not going to live till I eat his liver." That's how cruel she was. They also fought another group, another battle that the Muslims lost, and in that battle, Muhammad got injured. He got a head injury. His head was cut and bleeding, and people thought he had died. And so they thought, well, he's dead. And so they pulled back. They quit fighting. If they had continued fighting and just wiped him out, we wouldn't have Islam religion today. But they backed off, and Muhammad came later and he said, he even put a curse upon them, curse on their enemies. Let me read you his curse. And again, the difference between us and them, Christianity versus Muslim. He was wounded, he was enraged, he hurled a curse upon those assailants. He said, "Let the wrath of God burn against the men that have sprinkled the face of his apostle with his own blood." Put a curse on his enemies. Remember when Jesus was on the cross? He had an opportunity to curse those who were down below, didn't he? What did he say? He said, "Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing." Jesus, and what we believe, as far as forgiveness and love, what a contrast we have with Muhammad, who says, "Curse everybody, go kill them all. If they hurt me, I want you to get back and revenge against them." One final, by the way, in that battle, Hamza stood up in another battle and killed somebody, and Hind had hired an African Ethiopian javelin thrower who was just excellent spear thrower. He could, exactly where he could throw it. She hired him when he saw Hamza piercing through. And there at that battle, again, Ali, Hamza were there and battling, and they killed some people and made it very evident who he was. And that spear thrower took his spear and threw it and got Hamza and killed him right there. And of course, she and some other ladies went over to his body, cut him open. She tore out the liver, nibbled at it, it says. She swallowed it, got sick, and spat out the rest. The other Meccan women helped to cut him up into pieces. That's the gruesomeness of that day. Those are the folks who were against Muhammad. But what happened there was the Muslim credibility was lost because they had lost. And as long as they're winning, they're right. When you lose, it's like, oh, we must not be right. And it was an embarrassment to them. But notice the tremendous cruelty, greed, covetousness. There was a group of Jewish people, of those Jewish tribes or sections of the town of Medina. There was a group called the Banu Qurayza, the final tribes of the Jews. Muhammad and his troops battled that people. And by the way, the Jewish people, he knew they had money. And he loved to go after them because they did great, they could pillage, they could take their stuff. There's always a lot of money coming out of that group if they could attack a Jewish group. And so he began doing it to each of those settlements. The final tribe, the Qurayza group, he had them penned up in their castle or wherever they're in. For several days they surrendered. They said, okay, we surrender, we'll give you our money and so forth. And they said, just let the Aus tribe, A-U-S tribe, declare our what should happen to us. And of course, they were at least had a covenant with them and thought they'd treat them right. But the covenant Aus had a really mean guy, and they chose him. And he said, kill them all the men. Kill all the men. See if I can find it here. Take the women as spoil and children as slaves. And they were just in tears. And it was like 800 men. And they thought, you can't kill 800 men. Well, yes, he could. They took them out to the edge of town and dug a pit, cut their heads off one by one in groups of 6. I don't know if Muhammad did it all, but he was sure they were approving of it, of these Jewish people. All the men. There you see in the picture the wives weeping because of what they're doing to their families and their people. And of course, Muhammad wanted a young girl named Rouhani. He saw a 17-year-old girl, he thought, and she was Jewish. He wanted her to be his wife. He wanted to add one more beautiful girl to his wife, to his harem. And so he got her after killing 800 men, and she would not marry him. She became a concubine. She wouldn't agree to marriage. But this battle of Badr was one of the worst of all of them. In fact, this Jewish battle was the thing that split up the Muslims and the Jews from that day forward. Listen to what one historian, this is William Muir, which is probably more recent, like 200 years ago. He said the indiscriminate slaughter of 800 men and the subjugation of the whole tribe to slavery cannot be recognized otherwise as an act of monstrous cruelty. He goes on to say, in short, the butchery of the Banu Qurayza cast an indelible blot on the life of Muhammad. What happens here shows what Muhammad's nature really is. And you think about folks today who want to be like Muhammad. That's what every person in Islam today, their desire is not to follow God, but to follow in the steps of Muhammad. And it was cruelty back then, in those days as well as now. They went on to another place, Khaybar. They had another battle at Khaybar. Again, another Jewish community. They encircled it. They got the leader, the head man in the place, and said, we want the money. Where is it? They said, oh, this is all the money we have. And he said, no, that's not. They laid him down. They put a fire on his chest. They made a fire on him to torture him, for him to tell where the money was. He told them where all the wealth of the tribe was. After he told them, Muhammad cut his head off and got the money. So you can see the development of this religion, this faith, this so-called peaceful religion, developed upon cruelty, greed, covetousness, idolatry, everything negative you could imagine came out of this religion. The very next thing was they head to Mecca. He said, I've got to go back to that place where I came from. They were in Medina. They said, we've got to go back. He thought they'd have a battle, so he sent, rather than sending troops in, instead they went down for pilgrimage. Going into Going into Mecca, you could go in as a pilgrimage. Nobody would stop you because, after all, you're coming to worship the gods or coming to worship in this Kaaba, so they wouldn't stop you. So Muhammad thought, well, I'll tell you what, we'll send our people down there and tell them that we're going to worship it and have this pilgrimage. And so he went down there, and as he came, the people in Mecca fled. They went out and said, well, you can have the town. You can have it temporarily while you're on pilgrimage. We're not going to bother you. They came in and basically took over. And Bildad, whatever his name was, got up and sang the prayer things to invite everybody. When he was singing the prayer chants, they realized we had made a mistake. They had just turned their town over to this man and all his people. And rather than have a battle, he just took it over. And he began telling groups and tribes, you convert, you become like me, you become a follower of me, or basically we'll kill you. And take your children and your wives and make them slaves. So your choice, whatever you want to do. Place to place, all through Arabia. That's what he's doing. Medina, Mecca was now under his power, so he turns his attention to all the Arabian Peninsula, the whole the whole region down there. He was going after. In the north, there was a town called Muta. As he went up there, he found a Roman legion, and he couldn't win there, but he did attack. Went south to Yemen. And Yemen fell in 632 AD, just to the south of that. That became Muhammad's territory. Christian tribes in the area, there were Christian groups in the area. Most of them got beaten back. And most of them were forced to convert to Islam or die. Again, peaceful religion, no choice. You see, Islam means surrender. It means submission. It doesn't mean peace. It means you become a slave. And if you're a Christian, and in fact they let a lot of Christians live because not only would they let them live, but they knew they had to agree to be submissive or second-class citizens. And then you pay a fee, I forget what they call it, I can't remember, anyway. But then there's a tax. It was a financial tax you paid to live if you were a Christian. And they let these Christians live, and they were the safest because they could pay their way for life. If you weren't a Christian, you'd either have to convert or die. Around, I don't know what year it was, but during this time, Gabriel appeared to him again. And of course, all these appearances of Gabriel was kind of suspicious because all these things that he wanted to do, he said, oh, Gabriel taught this. Gabriel denounced pacifism. Pacifism means, I don't want to fight. Muhammad called those who were pacifists murmurers. They would murmur. You can't be a pacifist. It was considered evil. Let me read you a passage here in verse. Gabriel, he said, considered pacifism, or not fighting, an incontrovertible evil. In Surah 9:38 it says, do you prefer the present life before that which is to come? If you go not forth to war, he will punish you with a grievous punishment, and he will substitute another people for you. So Allah says in his word, you got to go to war. You got to fight. You can't be a conscientious objector. You got to fight. Well, some quirks of Muhammad. He had several quirks. I mentioned the things he believed and the things he saw. He hated silk for some reason. Just hated it. He was afraid of offensive breath. He believed that when he was in the presence of Gabriel and talking with Allah, he was afraid of his breath. So he was very careful to use toothpicks and making like toothbrushes and making sure his breath was fresh. He was afraid of the wind for some reason. Many believe he was a spiritual man because of these things. And even today, you'll find Muslims who make it a practice to make sure their mouth and the breath is clean. You hear about that. That's one of those quirks they believe Muhammad was like, and that's what they want to be. He made a farewell pilgrimage in his last years before he died. Now, he didn't know he was going to die, but he was real sick because one of those wives he won in battle, those Jewish groups he tried to destroy, one of those wives, and I forgot her name, I may have written it down somewhere, Zainab. I mentioned one wife he saw and was very attractive, so he killed the husband or killed the family and took her. Well, in that next battle, there was a woman, there were two women actually, one became his wife, the other one came, and in the victory celebration, she brought forth a big old animal, or what was a goat, I guess it was. Killed a goat and killed it and cooked it for him, made it beautiful, but she filled it full of poison, especially the shoulder. He loved the shoulder portion. And he didn't know any difference. He grabbed it and ate the shoulder. Two other guys with him, they ate too, and the two fellows next to him, they fell over dead. He knew right away because his stomach was hurting. He thought, oh, this is not right. Now, he survived, but guess what he did to that wife? All accounts say right away he killed her. But the reason she did it, she said, well, now, if he's a prophet, he'll know not to eat it. And if he's not a prophet, it's good to get rid of it. That was her thinking. It was a good thought. It didn't work. But from that point on, he was very unhealthy for the next 2 or 3 years because of eating that stuff. It created some real problems for him. But as he was dying, he put Abu Bakr, that man, that first convert other than his family, to lead the prayer. Remember, whoever leads the prayer leads the nation. Aisha objected, but he said, no, Abu Bakr is to lead these prayers. And his wives, actually the doctor said, well, let's make this concoction. They made this concoction out of Indian wood, seeds, and olive oil. They crammed it down his throat to help him survive. They thought it was pleurisy. I don't know why they thought that. He didn't like the solution. As soon as he drank it, he said, stuff's awful. And he turned around and made all of his wives drink the same thing. He forced them to pour it down their throats to drink it, to show me how ridiculous. And at his death time, he's having all his delusions. In fact, one of the things he says while he's on his deathbed, let me see if I can find it here. He says, all religions except Islam will be banished from Arabia. So the Jews were already pretty much done for, and Jews don't have any interest in being around these people. He'd driven them all out. Christians had no interest. His feeling was it's only going to be the Muslims who will have this place. Now, June the 8th, 632, he died. Of course, his wives wailed and carried on, but he passed away at that time. I'm trying to bring us to the point where he died. Now, keep in mind, in Christianity, when you sin, it's sin against God. A person who sins is disobeying God in some way or going against the beliefs of God. In Islam, it's if you're not following Muhammad. If you're not following the footsteps of Muhammad, that is sin. It's not anything to do with God, it's what the footsteps of Muhammad. As expressed in the Quran, stealing's okay, murder's okay. In fact, if it's against the enemy of God, it's a good thing that you're murdering somebody. Rape is okay, it's okay in the battlefield, it's okay. Slavery is okay. You take a group of people and you conquer their men, you take their wives into slavery. Non-Muslims, you're a second-class citizen. You have to submit, and you pay a tax. That's the way it was then. Guess what? It's the same way today. That's what Sharia law is all about. We hear about it, oh, it's not that big. Oh, yes, it is. It is. You will follow the ways of Muhammad. I'm going to bring this to an end because I've gone too long, but I'm trying to get through this until we go to the next section, which is after this. Let me just show you another picture here. There's a region that was won by the death of Muhammad. That's the region in which they had taken over that part of the world. Now, after Muhammad dies, within the next years, the caliphs after him thought, this is great, we're winning, let's keep going. And they conquered all the region of North Africa, through Spain, all those regions of Iraq and Iran today were taken over by the Muslim faith, so-called. We'll talk more about that at a later time.
You got any idea of the size of his following at his death? Numbers-wise?
It's hard to say because they conquered people. They weren't really followers, but in name only, because if they didn't follow, they're dead. So I don't have an idea on that. They were small at first, but they kept growing because of the violence. They said, I don't want to die, so I'll follow them out. I'll look that up and find out. By the way, Tim raised a question last week about was the pilgrimage called the Hajj? And I didn't know, but it is called the Hajj. H-A-J-J. It's done yearly. That's what the pilgrimage to Mecca is today. It's done every year. This year or next year, must be this year, it'll be in September. And it changes from year to year because of the 30-day calendar or whatever they're moving. Any other questions? Well, thank you. I'm sorry to stay so long, but let's close in prayer. Lord, these things and these historical things are perhaps difficult to hear and to fully understand, but we realize that what we see in this is not anything comparable to what we believe as Christians. We believe in love of Christ. We believe in loving people, not in conquering people. So teach us to follow Christ and to stay with the Bible, stay with the teachings of our Lord Jesus and all these things. We pray in Christ's name.